Hey everybody, I'm Anna McEwen. And now for Bob Switzer with the Epic Narrative.
Well, I finally made it to the end of numbers. How many weeks ago did I think that was going to happen? I was talking smack talk back then. I was like, oh, hey, we're done with the book of numbers. Oh. Looking back, I feel like I should have said, hey, Bob, why don't you read the book of numbers again and figure out how many chapters are in each? But anyways, we'll call it my optimism. My optimism gets me in all kinds of crazy situations, but I'd rather be ridiculously optimistic than always thinking negative. I'm telling you, way more fun to be hopeful than to be pessimistic. It just is. You have a much better life. I don't know why people choose to be pessimistic. Well, Bob, that's a reality. That's just a reality, Bob. Nope. My reality is filled with hope. My reality is filled with optimism and joy, because that's what I choose to view my reality through. And the rest of you who choose not to view reality that way, I can't, all I can do is maybe if you give me a chance, I might be able to kind of help you gain a perspective. And honestly, that's what I hope a lot of what the Epic Narrative does. I hope it gives you a perspective, a new perspective about God that allows you to sit back and go, wow, maybe there's hope. Maybe there is a good God. Maybe God actually never does leave me or forsake me. Maybe all these things that so many people were trying to tell me about God really aren't true. Maybe he doesn't kill people. Maybe he doesn't bring the fiery wrath of God. Yeah. It does manipulate people though when you think that way, right? It does change your behavior. It doesn't change your heart, but it'll change your behavior, and that's what so many ministers are only concerned about. Your behavior. That physically outside you look right. Financially, you give a lot, and that you serve the ministry of Jesus here at the church. I was reading the other day that somebody was trying to do the math of the average church in America and the size it is, and then the average income of America and how much everybody in the church needs to give in order to afford a full-time pastor. And basically all the numbers in the matrix came down to no one can afford a full-time pastor. Like, what in the world's going on? And then, people responded to his studies and said, well, not everybody in a church gives. And many times churches that, people who do give in the church tend to be wealthier, and they tend to give way more than 10%. And that's really true. I mean, I was part of a church, actually, every church I've been a part of, that's true. Every church I've been a part of. There are the few at the top of the food chain that give a lot. And they're usually drawn on a lot. Talked to a good friend of mine. We were just talking about church. And he relayed a story. He was a successful businessman. His business was very... it was seasonal. So some seasons were amazing and some were not, but generally speaking, he was pretty comfortable. And he, the pastor called him in, wanted to have a conversation. So he stopped in. He really thought like the pastor just wanted to have a conversation with him. But you see, the pleasantries were quickly evaporated because the pastor had a list of 25 people that he was meeting with, and you're a special one because you're on that list. And basically, I need you to continue to tithe, but I also want you to come up with an additional $25,000 toward our capital campaign. And I'll need that in writing before you leave the office, is basically where it was going. Now, it took a couple hours to get there, but, from my friend's perspective, he signed the paper, he gave the money, but the relationship was never the same. And I'm sure for the pastor, he's probably thinking, oh, this was great. This relationship was so close. I was able to get an extra 25 grand from this guy. Meanwhile, he actually destroyed the relationship. But they got the building built. God bless America. God was moving. God was making a difference in the community because now we have an upgraded building. Thank you so much, Jesus. And the consulting agency that gave us the outline in which to get all the money that we needed to get it done on time. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. No, I'm not against business principles. But I think you got to be upfront with it. I just do. I think you got to be upfront about it. And say, hey, we're going to be meeting with you guys. There's a bunch of you that we're going to ask for more money because we're trying to accomplish something. That's the bottom line. We believe it's something that the Lord wants us to do, but we could be wrong. And if we're wrong, then those of you that we ask for money are going to tell us no. So you guys, spend some time in prayer. When you come in for your appointment, have it in mind, have a number in mind. We'll have a number in mind. We'll see if we agree. And if we agree, awesome. And if you don't want to give any more, that's fine. Like, this is not going to change our relationship. We want to vet this out to see if God's in it or if we're just trying to get greedy. Oh, snap. That would change life, wouldn't it? All right. On with the epic narrative, Bob. My goodness. So in Numbers 32, basically we have a couple tribes here that the Reubenites and the Gadites, very large herds and flocks, saw that the lands of Jazer and Gilead were suitable for livestock. So they came to Moses and the priests and the leaders, and they said, the land subdued before the people of Israel, suitable for livestock. If we have favor in your eyes, let the land be given to us and our possession. Do not make us cross the Jordan. Now, we get Moses' response right away, but again, you have to remember, these are outlines of stories. So the people of these two tribes, the Gadites and the Reubenites, they come in, and it says that they were rich in livestock. In other words, well, one, it gives you an idea of what's been going on this journey, right? Lots of activities been going on. Lots of things. They continue to prosper. And when it says they were rich in livestock, literally it means the priority was in the breeding and marketing of livestock. They preferred wealth over family. They were like, we have a great reputation. People love what we're doing. Our bloodlines are strong. We don't want to go to the promised land. You guys are going over there to kill everybody. We need a more neutral market. That's what they're proposing. Now, Moses' response, I think it was measured. I think he thought about it. I think he understood what they were saying. Listen, God gave us these victories. We won with the presence of God, right? Which is what everybody gave him credit for, right? God gave us the opportunity to commit genocide and destroy all these lands and take over these cities. So this is as much God's land as the promised land. So we'd like to stay here. We love the land. It's perfect for what we want to do with our tribes. And Moses couldn't deny that. He couldn't sit there and say, no, God is, whatever. He was like, well, they're right. And it is perfect. And it is what they love to do. And they are rich in livestock. All right. So Moses, is initially kind of critical of their motives. And he is a little nervous, I think, in his response. Should your fellow Israelites go to war while you sit here? Why do you discourage the Israelites from crossing over to the land the Lord has given them? This is what your fathers did when I sent them from Kadesh Barnea and took over the land. After they went up from the valley of Eshcol and viewed the land, they discouraged the Israelites from entering the land the Lord had given them. The Lord's anger was aroused that day, and he swore an oath. Because they have not followed me wholeheartedly, not one of those who entered in with he goes through. And he made us wander in the wilderness for 40 years until the whole generation of those who had done evil in his sight was gone. And here you are, a brood of sinners, standing in place of your fathers and making the Lord even angrier with Israel. If you turn away from following him, he will leave all of us again into the wilderness, and you will cause of all their destruction. So Moses' reaction to their proposal is absolutely not. Because the last time we listened to people who didn't want to go into the promised land, everyone from the age of 20 to 60 died, including my wife, my brother, his wife, and I'm not going to make it. So, no, you're crazy. No, because all of that will be on your heads. No, you're not keeping. Why would you discourage us? He's like, you're going to influence everyone. Everyone's going to say, yeah, why can't we stay in this great land? Why do we have to go over there? Why do we have to do battle? Well, first of all, you don't have to do battle, but we covered that the last 3 weeks pretty extensively, so we'll just leave that alone. No, we're not going. None of us are going. We'll all take over this land. Moses was like, no, this is all going to end very badly. So they come back with a counter proposal. Verse 16, we would like to build pens here for our livestock and cities for our women and children. But we will arm ourselves, the men, ages 20 to 60, and we will go ahead of the Israelites until we have brought them to their place. Meanwhile, our women and children will live in fortified cities for protection from the inhabitants of the land. We will not return to our homes until each of the Israelites has received their inheritance. We will not receive any inheritance with them on the other side of the Jordan, because our inheritance has come to us on this side of the Jordan. Then Moses said to them, if you will do this, if you will arm yourselves before the Lord for battle, and if all of you who are armed on the other side of the Jordan before the Lord until he has driven out the enemies, then the land is subdued before the Lord. You may return and be free for your obligation to the Lord and Israel, and this land will be your possession for the Lord. But if you fail to do this, you will be sinners against the Lord, and you may be sure that your sin will find you out. Build for your women and children and pens for your flock, but do what you have promised. So they go ahead. Let me just synopsis this for you, okay? So their counter proposal is, we will leave our families in the newly conquered land, and we will lead battles with our fighting men. In other words, we will go first into battle. We'll take the highest risk position. In exchange, all our women and children and all of our flocks stay on this side of the Jordan. Our women and children, they stay in fortified cities, so that if they are attacked, the younger men, 12 to 19, and the older men, 60 to 100 or whatever, they can protect our women and children because they'll be behind walled cities. And we will stay in the land, and we will battle, and we will lead the battle, and we will keep our army in the province. No one will get R&R. No one will be sent home for vacation until the entire land is conquered, distributed, and settled. That's a long time. They committed to a long time. Moses agrees, but he says no new cities built until after the battles are done. So in other words, you can leave them in the current villages and cities, but you can't build new ones. And then he says, and you can leave after the wars are done, but before the land is settled. So basically, as we look through history, right, those guys were sent home. We'll deal with this when we in the next season when we hit Joshua. But basically, these guys were sent home after about 7 years of war. But it took an additional 7 years to settle the land. So they got out, rather than staying for 14 years, they stayed for 7. Now, these tribes had a great reputation for warriors. And they made fabulous leaders in battle. I wanted to, sorry, I'm scrolling backwards. So in verse 21, we see when the land has been driven out, it says, verse 21, until he has driven out his enemies before him. That doesn't mean violent battles. It means to take possession, to inherit, to occupy. All of those could happen without war. All of those could happen without battle. It's the leadership that decides how to take those words, and the leadership decided to do war. I just wanted to point that out because a lot of people just take it at the English, the way the English translated it, and they're like, ta-da, we're right. God loves to kill people. Verse 33, then Moses gave to the Gadites, the Reubenites, and half a tribe of Manasseh, son of Joseph, kingdom of Silo, king of the Amorites, kingdom of Og, king of Bashan, the whole land and its cities and the territory around them. And they built up those cities and built pens for their flocks. And the Reubenites rebuilt this and that and the other. And then Moses gave the Gadites and the Markites and the descendants of Manasseh, and they settled there. Now, where did Manasseh come in all this? And why are they there? They were not part of the conversation. They hadn't sent anybody to go see Moses. So why is all this going on? Most people believe that Manasseh was in essence a good influence, both spiritually and culturally, for the Reubenites and the Gadites. That's why half of the tribe was left or included in this arrangement. It's an interesting thing. Moses, maybe in his wisdom, said, you know what? I'm going to send half a tribe to settle that land with you. And evidently it turned out pretty well. I mean, we know ultimately the land of Israel, you know, it all ended up in captivity. But yeah, that's why Manasseh was there. It also could have maybe kept them from feeling quite as isolated. With just two of them, it could have been like, you know, you could not only start to feel isolated, but also you start to feel independent. Like, well, you know what? We are our own nation. And it's not that couldn't happen with 3 tribes, but it wasn't 3 whole tribes. So that there was half a tribe that was in the promised land and the other half was on the other side of the Jordan. There would be, in essence, a relational connection that would be ideally maintained. I know what happens in the end, but so do you if you read along. I think that was another part of the goal of Moses in putting half of the tribe of Manasseh with the tribe of Gadites and the Reubenites on that side of the Jordan. So here are the stages of the journey of the Israelites when they came up out of Egypt by divisions under the leadership of Moses and Aaron. And the Lord Moses recorded the stages of the journey, and this is their journey by stages. Now, I'm not going to read this all to you. Let me just say, it's always good to remember your journey. You know, to review God's goodness. People ask me about my journey often, you know, and I have a tough time shortening it, as you can imagine. As a storyteller, people are like, so, you know, as we travel in an RV, they're like, hey, so you're retired? It's like, no, we got along. No. Oh, really? Well, why'd you leave the church? Well, And I either make it like stupid short, like, I didn't really agree with the governing paradigm. You know, the hierarchy just was something that I thought wasn't healthy, and I wanted to bring in more community and conversation, and that didn't go over well. So it was either stay and comply or leave, because I wasn't going to stay and cause trouble. That's just not the kingdom. Anyway, so there's all that to go on. But it's good to remember. And each place that's mentioned in this chapter, right, has a story. And these stories were more than just a list, right? They were the start of a conversation. That happens in our family all the time. If we mention one of our dogs, Pepper, you remember, oh my gosh, the stories of Pepper. And then we mention Ginger. Holy smokes, does Ginger have stories? Pepper has all the good ones. Ginger has all the idiot ones. But they both have stories. If we mention the trip to Florida, where we went to Universal Studios, fabulous time. If we mention Waffle House, oh my gosh, do we have stories about Waffle House? And south of the border, oh, those are good stories. And then each one of the kids, like if you mention them, everybody has stories. Like, this is what this chapter does. It mentions places spaces. My gosh, an outline of places that bring stories to mind that allow everyone to tell them, so that everyone starts to feel connected. A lot of these that are currently getting ready to go to the promised land they were young. They were under the age of 20. Some of them barely, but so they might remember a lot of this stuff. But a lot of these young ones needed to be reminded. So there was an outline given so that everybody could go through the stories, because stories are beautiful things, wonderful things. Sometimes you don't want to be reminded of your stories. There's a few. One of our kids is fairly intense. Growing up, like everything was, he went at it 100%. So when he made a mistake, like it was a boom. It was boom. That's just it. So we look back, like it makes us laugh because, you know, nothing was halfway. But, you know, I also understand what it's like to be reminded of stuff that you wish no one would remember. And I think we all do. But those are what stories are each. Each place had these stories. Each one started a conversation. Now, sages, Hebrew sages teach this. This is fascinating to me. That each stop mentioned in this list brought forth another name for God. 42 names of God, 42 stops along the way. 42 points of testimony to prove the name of God. And that when you read this list, you were to read it completely so that no aspect of God's character would be left out. You couldn't just emphasize one. You had to read the whole thing. And then if you wanted to review one, you could go back. But you had to read it all. I love that. It's fascinating. I don't know, how true it is, but it doesn't seem like it wouldn't be true. I do. I love that. We might learn something from that, don't you think? Let's see. Verse 52. Sorry, I have that noted for some reason. Oh, speak to the Israelites, say to them, when you cross over the Jordan to Canaan, drive out all the inhabitants of the land before you, destroy all their carved images and cast their idols and demolish all their high places. Take possession of the land, settle it, for I have given you the land to possess. Distribute the land by lot according to your clans. To larger groups give So I just want to again point out this. All these words don't mean genocide and death to everybody in the land. As mentioned before, the idea of possession and inheritance and occupation does not mean death to everything else. Leadership, Moses and his leadership are the ones who decided to do that. Then he describes where things are and how things will be distributed, boundaries that they'll take. Canaan, the land will be allotted to you as an inheritance, that you are to have these boundaries. Now, these boundaries are still in dispute, right? Or at least they've been the cause of a lot of disputes and a lot of wars. Cities that were, large, open areas. The cities here, if you read, were to have these large open areas all around them. Why? Well, they were designed for places to have large meetings, to have festivals, a place where merchants could gather, inspections could take place, celebrations could take place. They were also where you would keep things like beehives and irrigation tools and sheds and shelters for harvesters, all that kind of stuff, water. They were also places where sheep shearing would occur and observations could be made as again, merchants would come in or shepherds would come in and they would stack up their skins or the wools, and they would be, you could observe, you could inspect. All that stuff was to take place outside the cities. In verses 9 through 34, we have it, the cities of refuge. Now, cities of refuge, the killings, the murderers, and refuge cities. So for 16 through 21, they gave the guidelines regarding murders, motives, intents, the implement used of the killings. And these cities were spread out throughout the land. They were created as a place for life. They were designed so that people who maybe were worthy of death, according to the law, would have a place to start over. But they were, in essence, confined to that place. I imagine these also created places for calm. If you murdered somebody unintentionally, but the family was, the posse was put together and they were chasing you down, you could get on your horse, ride to a sanctuary city, and in essence, have a place of safety so that everybody could just calm down. Judges could be brought in, evidence could be looked at, conversations could take place. Because you need that. But it could also mean that that particular city could have a lot of killers in it, which I'm sure added to an interesting, clientele for merchants and, general store operators. Oh, man. As I'm sure you can imagine. Sorry, that was... cities. I was in chapter 34 still on my phone. That was in chapter 35. And there's a lot of details in it. And then in chapter 36, we're just going to go ahead and roll out. We're going to be done with numbers here. Chapter 36. Basically, those 5 daughters, you remember the 5 daughters of Joseph that we talked about? They weren't married to anybody and they were given land. The Lord was like, yeah, give them land. Absolutely. Well, the tribe came to Moses of Gilead, son of Machir, son of Manasseh, who were from the clans of the descendants of Joseph. They came and spoke to Moses and the leaders and the heads of Israel. And they said, when the Lord commanded my Lord to give the land of inheritance to Israel's by lot, he ordered you to give the inheritance of our brother to his daughters. Now suppose they marry men from other Israelite tribes, then their inheritance will be taken from our ancestral inheritance and added to that tribe that they marry into, and so part of the inheritance allotted to us will be taken away. When the year of Jubilee and the Israelites comes, their inheritance will be added to that of their tribe into which they marry, and their property will be taken from the tribal inheritance of our ancestors. So basically, they were like, we're not opposed to the fact that they get a land of inheritance, but if they marry outside of our tribe, then their husband and their children will now own land that was allotted to us and our tribe, and their tribe will be enriched. It'll be disproportionately negative for us. So Moses made a ruling and basically leveled the playing field so the women could marry anyone in the nation, not just from the tribe of Manasseh. So he basically said, you're right. That's a good point. But no inheritance can pass from one tribe to another. So if they marry somebody from another tribe, then every daughter who inherits the land in any Israelite tribe must marry someone from their father's tribal clan so that every Israelite will possess the inheritance of their ancestor. No inheritance may pass from one tribe to another, for each Israelite tribe is to keep the land it inherits. So they could marry within their clans and the descendants of the son of Joseph, and their inheritance would remain with their tribe and their clan. But if they didn't, then they would lose that inheritance. So somebody from another clan would have to have a lot of thought. Like, you couldn't marry the girl just because you knew you would also get several hundred acres of land when the year of Jubilee came around. You had to just marry the girl because you wanted the girl, and she would lose that inheritance and it would stay with their tribe. And there was a long list of ways that it would end up still within the bloodlines of Joseph, according to the rulings of the rulings of Moses that had gone on for years. And this is the end of the book of Numbers. This is a lot of stuff that happened, a lot of nuances, a lot of indications that really were designed to bring people together, to build a family atmosphere from a culture of slavery and victimhood, of self-preservation and selfishness and arrogance, and move it into a land of hope and of love and of family and of relationship, both with each other and with God. And now we're going to hit Deuteronomy, and this will be a time where we're going to interact with probably the last year or less than a year of Moses' life. The last things that he's thinking, I got to write these things down and make sure they get it before I go. But we'll get into that next week on The Epic Narrative.
Don't go anywhere. We've got Bob Thoughts.
Well, look at that. Numbers is done. On to Deuteronomy. We got to be getting close to the end of the season now, because we did Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. You guys that are sticking this out, still impressed by you. I do think, as always, I know I mentioned it, I do think that this is important to have as part of the overall narrative, because so much of biblical manipulation is based on the perception that the law of God was designed to manipulate people and to cause separation between God and man. They look at the law and say, see, the law separates you from the love of God. Jesus and others have, other writers of the New Testament make it perfectly clear. There is nothing you can do to separate you from the love of God. Nothing you've done, nothing you ever will do. Didn't David say in the book of Psalms, like, even if I go to the depths of hell, you are there. Like, there's nowhere you can go and nothing you can do. So religion loves the law. They love to nail down the law. They love to make constant, some of them new, new places of separation. I mean, religion will use anything to separate you. Tradition, programming, music, dress code, hair code. I mean, it doesn't matter. The religion will always find a way to separate you from other people. That's part of the foundations of religion. So if you ever want to know whether or not you're part of a religious group of people, see how many ways that they separate from other groups of people. Even if they passively agree, well, yeah, they're probably going to heaven, but we have the right way to get to heaven. I don't know. It's crazy what religion will do. It really will. And religious people separate from other people all the time. And sometimes, you have leadership on the top of a hierarchy, which is another form of separation, right? The leader on the top will separate from anybody who doesn't agree with them because, well, religion can't be questioned. Religion demands loyalty. Religion demands faithfulness. Religion demands sacrifice. And whenever you don't meet those criteria, wherever they move the goalposts, then you're separated from. It's a fascinating study and sad at the same time. So many people hurt by religion and separation, and the law is used to justify so much of it. And so that's why I think it's important for us to go through. And we do get back into stories. I'm currently recording season 5, and man, we it'll be fun. It's just way different than the law when you're dealing with stories. Oh, good grief. But still so much to learn. Still so much to learn. There's another thing I noticed that we get involved in, right? God does something, and then we take what he did, and we can't rest there. We can't just look at it and say, wow, let's just celebrate what God did. We think, all right, now I have to do more. I have to die to myself to accomplish even more than what God just accomplished. I have to sacrifice and push and develop even more because that's what, God started this. Now I have to finish it type of thing. And again, another religious mindset, which says you are now going to separate from God what God's done. And you're going to do something. You're going to do something amazing. You're going to do something more. You're going to propel the kingdom even further. These are all things that sound great to our ego, but the reality is they hurt the kingdom of God because they cause separation, they cause pride, they cause depression and hurt and self-rejection, and the list goes on and on. But that's the way religion operates. That's the way religion operates. So I hope you're gaining a good positive aspect of what the law was designed for. And I look forward, as always, to seeing you again next week on The Epic Narrative.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, you can subscribe to this podcast on any platform you use. You can also reach out to Bob for questions or booking at thebobswitzer.com or email him at thebobswitzer@gmail.com. See you next week, guys.